Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yeah, I know this is late, but we got the Ariana Grande album bomb, and it's Billboard Breakdown.
I don't remember.
So look, as I said, this episode is going to be late going live. Just my luck for an album bomb week from Ariana Grande that, against all odds, managed to do a lot better than I personally expected. We'll get into the details why later on, but suffice to say, if I lose several hours of writing time beforehand because Billboard can't get things in order on schedule, well, y'all are accustomed to handling this with some grace, especially on a week where I already did talk at length about this album in question on my main channel. Highly recommend you go check that out first if you want some establishing context. But now onto the matter at hand, the top 10. And our new number 1, We Can't Be Friends, Wait for Your Love by Ariana Grande. And honestly, this did surprise me. She's on Republic. That rolls up under UMG. There goes all the TikTok promo. Or at least I would say that if it didn't get chipmunked and spliced and bootlegged all over that platform. And it doesn't count towards the charts, and it's not official, but it does operate as its own form of grassroots promo alongside Strom sales, getting shipped to radio, and utter dominance on streaming and YouTube. Seriously, on streaming alone, reportedly it would have gone to number 1 anyway. But it was by no means guaranteed, and that takes us to our number 2, and probably the cause as to why the charts are late, Lose Control by Teddy Swims. I already mentioned that he and Warner pushed a bunch of versions of this song in order to capitalize on sales and radio as much as possible, especially facing the uphill battle on streaming, but it turns out there may have been dubious behavior around says sales versions, so reportedly some had been disqualified or clawed back. I'm just a little bewildered as to his strategy here. Ariana Grande is an A-lister. This is Teddy Swims' first hit, and next week she'll be facing a much steeper streaming battle. He'll probably get the advantage. Why try the tricks now? Well, it probably has a lot to do with our number 3, Beautiful Things by Benson Boone, which lags significantly on the radio, but it's got better streaming and the sales are there as well. It's probably going to compete with Lose Control for the top spot next week. God help us all. But hey, at least knocked off Carnival by Kanye West, Ty Dolla $ign, Rich the Kid, and Playboy Carti to number 4. Turns out when all you have is streaming and radio is understandably reticent to get on board, that margin starts shrinking fast. Now that did hold over Lovin' On Me by Jack Harlow at number 5. It's down across the board, even lingering at the top on radio. It's going away soon. And Texas Hold'em by Beyonce at number 6, where despite one hell of a radio push, the streaming went down. Although with Cowboy Carter coming in a couple weeks, it's gonna rebound. Then we got the first big new arrival in the top 10, outside of Ariana Grande, Act 2, Date at 8 by 4Bats, thanks to the big remix from Drake at number 7. I mean, I didn't like this song when it dropped. Drake's remix feels like a separate song stapled onto it. It's all pretty bad, but it got a ton of streaming, so we'll see how long it lasts. It vaulted over Greedy by Tate McRae at number 8, where a decent radio week just could not hold over all the streaming losses. Where, speaking of which, I Remember Everything by Zach Bryan and Casey Musgrave slid down to number 9. When you're reliant pretty much just on streaming, fluctuations like album bombs can hit you a lot harder. And on that note, as predicted, Yes and by Ariana Grande rebounded big to number 10, but given how much radio has been dumping this song, I cannot imagine it lasting in the top 10 at all. And that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts, and boy, in the latter group, we got some long-running tracks that are finally gone. Need a Favor by Jelly Roll, On My Mama by Victoria Monet, Rich Baby Daddy by Drake, SZA, and Sexy Red, and the real big one, Flowers by Miley Cyrus. Now, as expected, we're in an album bomb week, and there are a lot of losers, albeit maybe fewer than you might think, because the album bomb landed predominantly in the top 40, so the disruption feels more concentrated. Let's start with a few scattered outliers first, like what Freestyle by Cardi B just collapsed off the debut to 84. Though she's got a big single coming next week, I don't think it's gonna matter much. Holy Smokes by Bailey Zimmerman continues to tank at 87, and My Eyes by Travis Scott lost all of his gains down to 95. Now from there, it's kind of all over the place because we just don't know how much publishing Universal owns for these acts, so it raises a big question around the TikTok promo. So I'm gonna start with the songs that probably have a shot of clinching year-end positions that I know were seriously impacted. Is It Over Now by Taylor Swift at 27, La Diabla and La Victima by Javi at 44 and 76 respectively. I mean, he's on Interscope at the worst possible time. Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo at 48, Burn It Down by Parker McCollum at 53, Everybody by Nicki Minaj and Lil Uzi Vert at 59, You Broke My Heart by Drake at 66, and most distressingly, Surround Sound by Jid featuring 21 Savage and Baby Tate. Given how much of his traction came from streaming and TikTok in particular, yeah, bad news. But you're gonna see tracks impacted simply because of streaming, and a regular album bomb, that happens. Like Red Rum by 21 Savage at 22, Praise Ya in the Moonlight by YG Marley at 57, Get In With Me by Boss Mandilo at 63, Breathe by Yeet at 65, and One Call by Rich Amiri at 70. Finally, we have the country that is more impacted predominantly on position placement and the song's own strengths. Pretty Little Poison by Warren Zeders slid down to 42, Where the Wild Things Are by Luke Combs fell to 46, and The Painter by Cody Johnson hit 49. Although, to be fair, they all did see radio losses this week too. So now for the gains and returns, and I don't even know what I'm supposed to say here. I already mentioned both the gains going into the top 10, and the one return we have is Tourniquet by Zach Bryan, clawing back to 97 yet again. To make matters worse, Ariana Grande only charted 11 new songs this week. That places her in the mid-range for my album bomb rules, and only one new song is outside of the top 40. So alright, screw it, we're gonna be late anyways, and might as well handle the whole damn thing with some type of brevity. But we're also not starting with her in our new arrivals. Number 98. Outskirts by Sam Hunt.
I wish I was running by your house first. Something about a summer in the South sure shines like gold down these old Round Bell River Valley back roads.
You know that this year will make it a decade since Sam Hunt put out his debut album? Hasn't it felt like mainstream country has changed so much, but also not much at all the past 10 years? Including, for some reason, a Sam Hunt single getting pushed a full year after its initial release, even though he's on MCA Nashville, which rolls up to Universal. I mean, I guess we should count ourselves lucky that Sam Hunt seems to have largely missed TikTok. I can imagine his sound working more on that godforsaken app than many would think. But alright, whatever. Here's a single from the album, where of course there's no release date in sight, and look, by Sam Hunt standards, it's passable in what sounds like Jordan Davis was ripping off a number of years ago. The piano and guitar interplay is decently warm, and Sam Hunt is an okay enough singer, trying to sell some heartbreak that while he's deep in the city, he is so busy that it's not until he gets to the outskirts of town he thinks about this failed relationship and what might have been out there. It's kind of a shame then that everything else around the song is incredibly clunky. The percussion is let in and provides no groove. There's whooshing effects everywhere in place of any sort of atmosphere, and even the backing vocals feel weirdly synthetic and close around Hunt's voice. It's really distracting on the verses away from that hook. But look, this is minor, and it's hard to ignore that the most pertinent detail Sam Hunt provides about this ex-girl is that, in his mind, she shot down his proposed baby names while they were building a place out in the outskirts. I mean, the song seems more interested in geography references than said ex. And then on the final hook, he references hanging out with Haley from Toronto. I mean, he's already confirmed that this Haley's not a real person, but someone he imagines from somewhere very far away. Okay, a flight from Toronto to Nashville is just over 2 hours, whereas a flight to Los Angeles is nearly 5. So not only is your explanation bad, you gave more information about her than your ex. Yeah, I know I'm nitpicking, but the overarranged production and odd points of focus on the writing cause a, let's be honest, harmless song to sink into this weird cesspool of mediocrity. It should be better than it is. Next, number 96, Back Then, Right Now by Tyler Hubbard.
I was holding, living in the moment with a good time crowd, making life count. Damn, I could use a little more back then, right now.
So look, looks like Tyler Hubbard's solo country career is proceeding steadily. He's actually had some actual hits in the 2020s away from Florida Georgia Line, and now this is a single tied to his next album targeted for this year. It first came out last September, but that sort of radio timeline is apparently something Nashville is attached to in the age of streaming for some stupid reason. And okay, look, I like Hubbard's drawl more than most, even as processed as it is here, and this has a slick guitar rollick that when paired with some propulsive percussion and some nice touches of pedal steel, I can almost get on board, at least until the bridge goes for more whooshing and a breakdown that's not really needed, nor fitting to this song, which is basically an extended nostalgia trip. Why not go full neo-traditional in the instrumentation? And you know what, it's fine, I guess. A lot of the details that he brings up in the writing are superficial, and I definitely raised my eyebrows at the lines about not talking about politics and we didn't worry about what we didn't know. But also, given how Florida Georgia Line broke up over politics, I get the resigned regret when you lose your friend and bandmate because he went hard right. I don't know, I get why it's getting airplay, but I'm not sure this is what folks want to hear from Tyler Hubbard or even Florida Georgia Line. It doesn't really play to his strengths, and it never has. It's not bad, not especially good either. Number 74, Austin by Dasha.
Did you burn through money? Did your ex find out? Where there's a will and there's a way, and I'm damn sure you lost it. Didn't even say goodbye, just wish I knew what cost it.
The buzz around this track's been weird to me. I first heard about it as an artist who blew up on TikTok, who was pivoting into country in order to pick up mainstream traction after the pop album she made in LA, signed to Warner, didn't really go anywhere. But you know what? That doesn't have to be a bad thing. Lucy Hale, of all people, cut a country album a decade ago, and it was legit great. And apparently Dasha liked country as a kid, she fell back in love with it, it's not purely mercenary, and this is the song that got traction from her project back in February, and honestly, it's okay. Definitely pulling in the modern folk with the stomp clap percussion and the brittle western style acoustics, but they actually do bring out a fiddle, and there's a pattern to the song that I don't mind at all, especially as they were trying to make plans in the lyrics, chase their dreams, and yet the guy wound up drowning himself in liquor, so she had to leave and go on alone. I actually kind of like how it's not precisely clear why he ran off, and a part of me likes to imagine this as the flip side to cuts like More Than My Hometown by Morgan Wallen. But the angry results are just, you have to go off alone, and there is some pathos in it. Now, given that it's built for TikTok, it does feel short to me. A song like this could probably use a bridge, maybe one more twist, really let the fiddle cut loose. But even as it's very obviously pop country, I don't mind this. Pretty good. Give it a shot. Number 55, Ordinary Things by Ariana Grande featuring Nonna.
Ordinary things to you. It's funny, but it's true. There's never gonna be an ordinary thing as long as I'm with you.
We got a lot of Ariana Grande songs coming up next. Again, I've already reviewed the album. I'm gonna try to keep these brief, and we're gonna start with one that I actually quite like as the album closer. The horns welling up around the bass and the faint trap percussion, where Ariana croons about all the little things that will never quite be ordinary as long as they're with her new paramour. Where, as her grandmother advises on that final monologue, she talks about the little things that kept her and her grandfather's love going. Where if the kiss goodnight ever starts feeling truly uncomfortable, get the hell out. I do think the placement of the monologue is a little bit awkward, with more focus on Ariana Grande's previous breakup than that new love going forward and how the monologue is structured, but that's minor. Interesting that Nonna is now the oldest person to ever chart in the Hot 100 in her mid-90s. I mean, neat little detail. Good song. Number 39, I Wish I Hated You by Ariana Grande.
I wish that weren't true. Wish there was worse to you. I wish you were worse to me. Yeah, I wish I hated you.
One of my favorites on the album, handily. I love the blubbery synth touches that come along with the subtle taps of the bass and the utterly gorgeous vocal arrangement. It's subtle and intimate and captures the complicated feelings of wishing that you hated your ex, but you really can't. Sometimes at the end of a breakup of a long relationship, you just have too many good or at least complicated emotions that direct hatred doesn't feel like enough. It's easy to demonize an ex. It takes maturity to realize you can't hate him, you wish he was worse than he was. And that would drive more introspection and closure in the end. I wish more of the album continued down this line of thought. Really damn frustrating it doesn't, but you know what? The song is excellent. Check it out. Number 38, Intro, End of the World by Ariana Grande.
You're really supposed to know that shit. Feel it in your bones and own that shit. I don't know.
Not really a lot to say about a 90-second intro into the album, but the thematic setup is decent as the watery guitars rise alongside the strings as Ariana Grande second guesses an awkward moment that has then prompted a lot of overthinking, I can relate, and that alongside her general discomfort with it all has her making the choice to end it. And I like the implication that if this is how it feels when it was normal, what could she possibly expect if it went bad? Now, again, this is an intro. Honestly, not a lot to it, but I do think it's pretty good. Unlike number 37, Imperfect for You by Ariana Grande.
Love you like you need me to. Imperfect for you.
Look, I can appreciate that she experimented. She arguably doesn't do enough of it on this album, but I'm sorry, whoever told her that a stab at watery psychedelia was a good idea was wrong. And it's a shame because the lyrical sentiment here is kinda good. She and her new partner are both in the aftermath of failed relationships to then be together. They're still very anxious about everything that they left behind for this. It's intensely self-aware. But hey, you know what? They'll be imperfect for each other. It's why in a certain light, the awkwardness of the song kinda makes sense. Shame that the off-key guitar stolen from a bad late 90s psychedelic pickup tested my patience, alongside the fizzy drum machine and the clunky bass and the awkward stuttering rattle here. Or even if the vocal flourish of the hook is intended to sound a little uncanny, I don't know, I think it succeeds a bit too well for me. I don't even think it's bad, it's just a weird clunker near the end of the album. Let's move on. Number 30, True Story by Ariana Grande.
Lies, you fantasize about you and I. This is a true story about all the games I know you play.
This is another song I actually like because of its implications. As I said in my review, Ariana Grande kind of really sucks playing the bad girl. That sort of cold capriciousness is not something I believe she can sell, and I think she kind of knows it. So she'll play the bad girl for the ex, even though she can't sell it. It's not true their experiences in the relationship, and honestly, if they knew each other well enough, he would have recognized it, but if it's what he needs to move on, so be it. It helps that the twinkling, gauzy synths around the minor key vocal line plays into a shuddering, bassy synth warp that's got some real swing to it. Feels very 2000s R&B in the underlying melody, which is not a sound that's seen as much nostalgia, probably could afford a little bit more, especially with Ariana Grande nailing the dejected heartbreak in her vocal runs here. Of course, to complete that throwback, the song would actually need a bridge, or actually run 3 minutes, but it is good enough to fill the gap. I do like it. Number 28, Don't Wanna Break Up Again by Ariana Grande.
I don't wanna break up again, baby.
The more I reflect on this album, the more I pick up on the mature notes in the writing that usually come when you hit your 30s if you're lucky. Because at this age, you don't want to go through more breakups and heartbreak and have to start over again, especially if you had a marriage for any length of time, and especially as Ariana Grande's parents divorced and she really wanted to break the cycle. She wanted it to work. I mean, shame the production doesn't do much for me here at all. A song like this could have afforded a greater sense of intimacy, not that chalky rattle passing as percussion over the gurgle of bass and the faded synths. The twinkle in the hook feels very weirdly tinny, and the vocal master is honestly a lot rougher than it should be. There's a good sentiment at the core of this track, just needed better execution. Number 25, Bye by Ariana Grande.
Bye bye, it's over, yeah. Bye bye, I'm taking what's mine, yeah. Bye bye, it's over, yeah.
Oh look, she's trying her hand at new disco for the proper breakup song that opens up after the intro, and look, I'm sorry. I think this is a metallic and gooey mess where no amount of new wave guitar rollick is winning me over. And that is weird as hell that Max Martin is behind this. He was around in the late 90s when they were reinventing that disco sound with more punch and verve than the first time. Why does the song have no impact in the percussion or any sense of proper atmosphere? Or I don't know, a composition where the lyrics feel very stop and start, unable to build any sense of groove or proper momentum. Honestly, the song just feels underwritten as a whole. Just using boy bye as the central term behind the hook feels a bit like lazy songwriting. And yes, I know the sentiment is that she's calling back to the cycles of her mother's divorce with the return of Saturn, where to me, I'm sorry, it feels like something written in a half hour to set the tone of the album because you don't really have your obvious dance song in order to compete with a Dua Lipa or a Doja Cat. So no, gotta be honest, not a fan of this either. Number 23, Eternal Sunshine by Ariana Grande.
When you're in her, I found a good boy and he's on my side. You're just my eternal sunshine, sunshine.
Now, this is the track from the album that I expected to prompt more discourse than it seems to have gotten. The title track, where it's implied that Ariana Grande's ex is already in a new relationship that may be of suspicious timing. The deflection from much of what she's seen in the social media backlash. I don't think it worked, mostly because on the hook she brings up her new relationship where she is totally now happy and she's moved on, and no, I don't buy it. You don't claim that your ex played you like Atari, complete with a video game sound effect if that's true, but it's also part of the point. This is a song about dealing with feeling gaslit and second-guessing lies, which is why it's trying to make the most direct callbacks to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But man, I wish the production was remotely interesting beyond this fidgety, weedy trap percussion where the bass rumble is getting more attention than any actual melody, which remains washed out midway back. Again, this is not bad per se, but it should be much better. And speaking of that, number 17, Supernatural by Ariana Grande. Not gonna lie, I was really happy to see this. My favorite song on the album chart this high. Mostly because it's one of the better choices as a follow-up pop single, and it's probably the most straightforward love song on the album. That might make it an odd fit amidst all the emotional drama that's a little bit more dense, but the hazy atmospherics with a better percussion balance before the jagged synths warp in across the hook, and some of her most ethereal vocal layering on the album, it nails that slightly off-kilter vibe in the best way possible, especially as the bridge bends around that melody and she actually can belt on that final hook. Yeah, it's pop diva Ariana Grande, but for the past 10 or so years, I usually like that. I think if you push it as like a third or fourth single, especially to the radio, this could really work this summer. And it's certainly a lot better than number 16, The Boy Is Mine by Ariana Grande. Okay, look, with that title, the cultural metatext going into this album, I'm not surprised at all that it got so much attention. It's very obviously drawing a parallel to the classic Brandy and Monica duet, The Boy Is Mine from the 90s, which at the time, well, you might not know this, was drawing reference to a somewhat forgotten Paul McCartney-Michael Jackson song, The Girl Is Mine. But let's be real, Brandy and Monica, it became something much bigger in R&B in the late 90s, with the tabloids playing up the bad relationship between Brandy and Monica. How much of any of it is true is tough to prove. Maybe not a boy between them, but there's certainly been animosity that's lingered in some form for decades, and I'm sorry, everything about this interpolation does not work for me. For one, this is not a duet, it's just Ariana Grande's side of the story. It feels unbalanced, and it doesn't exactly play into any real sense of culpability. And since Ariana, again, is not good at playing the bad girl, the catty energy that she can't sell doesn't work. And the arrangement's not good either. The choppy, gauzy melody that often interferes with the chops and stutters that they process her vocals through, the jerky pre-chorus, the dull trap percussion alongside the synth bass. The song's a mess, and if it was attempting to add more moral ambiguity to the album, I think it falls flat in its face. Every listen through this album and how it moves from this song into Yes And, it makes me dislike it more. I didn't call this the worst on the album when I reviewed it. I think I will now. And finally, number 1, We Can't Be Friends, Wait For Your Love by Ariana Grande.
You cling to your papers and pens. Wait until you like me again. Wait for your love.
And we end off with Well, I'm not surprised with how many nuggets of the song were chopped and pitch shifted and bootlegged in some form on TikTok, but the more I think about it, the less I'm convinced this works as a whole. Now, from a compositional standpoint, the vocal mixing is actually really pretty alongside the keyboard flourishes, the gentle, pulsating synth that picks up some nice grinding groove, and those strings that swell up as the song concludes. The progression to actually get there is really impressive. But the content, look, part of me hears chunks of the writing and immediately knows how it's going to be chopped out for TikTok. And Ariana Grande is a smart enough songwriter where she can do that in a time when she would have that official promo option. But this is also a song following Yes and while Ariana kind of dodged any assertion that it's about the critics or the fans giving her shit, it's very obviously targeted to try to be magnanimous and win them back because, hey, despite all the shit, she still looks good. Right? I mean, there's this odd presumption that of course the love is coming back in her direction if they can't be friends right now, but the best moment of the track for me comes on the bridge, where she recognizes how much of the media has taken control of her narrative and she feels very seen at the darkest of moments. But maybe if she can be properly alone in her own space, that is what she'll need. And you know what? That is probably true. It's kind of a shame the album doesn't really continue down that line of introspection at all. Look, I don't know, the song's not bad. As a simpler pop song, I think the composition is actually really quite good, even if I can see how each individual part will be purposely remixed away from the actual song. I just wish it felt a little less like a vehicle for all that and got to something deeper. That's all. But that's our week. Again, a bit of a long one, but that is what happens when the charts are late, and I'm writing this as quickly as I can to get something out. Best and worst, they are all from Ariana Grande this time. Worst is going to The Boy Is Mine, dishonorable mention to Imperfect for You, best of the week with Supernatural, and honorable mention for I Wish I Hated You. Next week, the fallout of all this. It's gonna be fascinating. Stay tuned. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you.